brim, to the brim, to the brim.
I like that. Grim to the brim.
Well, hello and welcome to the podcast. We've got a great episode for... What? Well, press record, Kate, for fuck's sake. What do you think the bell's for? Well, hello and welcome to the podcast. We've got a great episode for you this week. It's Grim to the Brim with me, Dave. And who else is here?
Bananananks.
And also...
Kate Pianpots.
And I think there's somebody else lurking about in the darkness. Who is it?
Andy Sumutin.
Right, oh well, let's have on some fucking stories. Crack on. Somebody's got a story. I can see the pages here. Can you hear the pages being turned?
I've got a lovely story.
Ooh, a lovely one. Is it a lovely love story?
I wouldn't call it a love story. It's more of a trauma story.
No.
It's called Saint Joseph in the Forest. There was once a time a mother who had 3 daughters, the eldest of whom was rude and wicked, the second much better, although she had her faults. But the youngest was pious and a good child. The mother was, however, so strange that it was just the eldest daughter whom she loved the most, and she could not bear the youngest. On this account, she often sent the poor girl out into the great forest in order to get rid of her, for she thought she would lose herself and never come back again. But the guardian angel, which every good child has, did not forsake her, but always brought her into the right path again. Once, however, the guardian angel behaved as if he were not there, and the child could not find her way out of the forest again. She walked on constantly until evening came, and then she saw a tiny light burning in the distance, ran up to it at once, and came to a little hut. She knocked.
So where's the guardian angel? He just decides one time.
He went for a pint or something, I don't know.
Okay, it's not important, is it? Sorry.
She walked on constantly until evening came, and then she saw a tiny light burning in the distance, ran up to it at once, and came to a little hut. She knocked. The door opened, and she came to a second door, where she knocked again. An old man, who had a snow-white beard and looked venerable, opened it for her, and he was no other than Saint Joseph. He said quite kindly, "Come, dear child, seat thyself on my little chair by the fire, and warm thyself. I will fetch thee clear water if thou art thirsty."
What the hell is Saint Joseph up to?
It's sus, isn't it? He's got a little chair specific for children.
Yeah, there's a reason he's behind 2
Yeah,
doors.
It's for security door, innit?
Yeah.
"I'll fetch thee clear water if thou art thirsty. But here in the forest I have nothing for thee to eat but a couple of little roots which thou must first scrape and boil." Saint Joseph gave her the roots. The girl scraped them clean, and then she brought a piece of pancake and the bread that her mother had given to her to take with her, mixed all together in a pan, and cooked herself a thick soup.
Hold on a minute. I've got a root that you'll have to scrape and clean, and she just did it. Like, okay.
She had pancake. I don't know why she bothered.
I'll have the pancake after I eat the scraped root.
I'll be like, "No, but you can have your roots, mate. I'll have the pancake."
You want me to
I've got my
scrape?
pancake. I don't need any roots, thanks. It's fine.
When it was ready, Saint Joseph said, "I'm so hungry. Give me some of thy food." And the child was quite willing, and gave him more than she kept for herself. But God's blessing was with her, so that she was satisfied. When they had eaten, Saint Joseph said, "Now we will go to bed. I have, however, only one bed."
What?
Okay, let's see what's happening here.
Scrape my root.
He's got another root for her to scrape. Yeah.
"Lay thyself in the bed. I will lie on the ground on the straw."
Yeah, you will.
"No," she answered. "Stay in your own bed. The straw is soft enough for me." Saint Joseph, however, took the child in his arms and carried her into the little bed, and there she said her prayers and fell asleep. Well, that's what he's claiming. Next,
I want to know what those
Just
prayers
wait for the
were.
documentary on More 5.
Please don't rape me.
next morning, when she awoke, she wanted to say good morning to Saint Joseph, but she did not see him. Then she got up and looked for him, but could not find him anywhere. At last she perceived behind the door a bag with money so heavy she could just carry it, and on it was written that it was for a child who had slept there that night.
That's payment for your services.
Read between the lines here. On this, she took the bag, bounded away with it, and got safely to her mother, and as she gave her mother all the money, she could not help being satisfied with her. The next day, the second child also took a fancy to go into the forest. Her mother gave her a much larger piece of pancake and bread. It happened with her just as it did with the first child. In the evening, she came to St. Joseph's little hut, who gave her roots for a thick soup. When it was ready, he likewise said to her, "I'm so hungry, give me some of thy food." And then the child said, "You may have your share." Afterwards, when St. Joseph offered her his bed and wanted to lie on the straw, she replied, "No, lie down in the bed, there's plenty of room for both of us." St. Joseph took her in his arms and put her in the bed and laid himself on the straw. Again, so he claims. In the morning, when the child awoke and looked for St. Joseph, he had vanished. But behind the door, she found a little sack of money that was about as long as a hand. What?
It's not really a sack, it's more like a little pouch.
It's as long as a...
I can totally picture it now you've said that. Yeah, that's a
good measurement,
description.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And on it was written that it was for a child who had slept there that last night. So she took the little bag and ran home with it and took it to her mother, but secretly kept 2 pieces for herself.
Wait, he doesn't even ask the names. Is that what he's
He
putting
doesn't
on the
want to know
label?
the names.
To the kid who slept here last night. Cheers.
I mean, if he knows their names, it's like probably like more dangerous for him, right?
Oh, yeah. No, you're
To the
right,
little
yeah.
girl who slept in my bed last night. Creepy.
Okay, so the eldest daughter had by this time grown curious, and the next morning also insisted on going out into the forest. Her mother gave her pancakes with her, as many as she wanted, and bread and cheese as well. That's right. In the
Is
evening...
this the daughter that she hated?
No, this
or
is
that
the one she loved.
Right, okay.
The horrible one.
Right.
In the evening, she found St. Joseph in his little hut, just as the 2 others had found him. When the soup was ready and St. Joseph said, "I'm so hungry, give me some of thy food," the girl answered, "Wait until I'm satisfied, and if there's anything left, thou shalt have it." She ate, however, nearly the whole of it, and St. Joseph had to scrape the dish.
He had his roots, what was he complaining about?
He seems to have an infinite supply of these roots, have you noticed?
Yeah.
Afterwards, the good old man offered her his bed and wanted to lie on the straw. She took it without making any opposition, laid herself down in the little bed, and left the hard straw to the white-haired man. Next morning, when she awoke, St. Joseph was not to be found. But she did not trouble herself about that. She looked behind the door for a money bag. She fancied something that was lying on the ground, but as she could not very well distinguish what it was, she stooped down and examined it closely, but it remained hanging to her nose. When she got up again, she saw to her horror that it was a second nose, which was hanging fast to her own. Then she began to scream and howl, but that did no good. She was forced to see it always on her nose, for it stretched out so far. Make of that what you will.
Is that the end?
No, there's another paragraph. Don't worry.
Okay, right. Phew.
And she ran out and screamed without stopping, till she met St. Joseph, at whose feet she fell and begged, until out of pity he took her nose off again, and even gave her 2 farthings. When she got home, her mother was standing before the door and said, "What hast thou given to thee?" And then she lied and said, "A great big bag of money, but I lost it on the way." "Lost it!" cried the mother. "Oh, but we'll find it soon again," and took her by the hand and wanted to seek it with her. At first she began to cry and did not wish to go, but at last she went. On the way, however, so many lizards and snakes broke loose on both of them that they did not know how to save themselves. At last they stung the wicked child to death, and they stung the mother in the foot because she had not brought her up better.
Take that, you stupid bitch.
And the guardian angel from the first little girl clearly had just pissed off, because he's like, if anyone needs a guardian angel, it's when a creepy old man is saying, "Come on, I only have 1 bed. Climb in here with me." That's the sort of best time.
Yeah, that's alarm bells right there.
A guardian angel should intervene, yeah.
Exactly. None of this would have happened if the guardian angel had been there.
I think the guardian angel had fallen asleep. He legit had fallen asleep and like fell asleep on his keyboard or something, because he started spawning snakes and lizards at one point. It was purely accidental, I think.
Oh shit, maybe he was in on it with St. Joseph.
Oh, maybe St. Joseph was the guardian angel.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Plot twist.
I just love how all of the lizards were judging the mother because she didn't raise a very good kid.
Yeah, and they sort of just kill the child, and the mother just has to sort of, I imagine living with that guilt would be pretty terrible, but
Yeah, you're a lizard, right?
the mother just gets bitten on the foot. Like, This doesn't seem right.
And since when do lizards sting anybody?
I think they carry wasps in their hands.
Little handbags full of
Throw
wasps.
Yes.
I just felt like she was like, "Oh, Saint Joseph, I'm pissed off. You've put a nose on me nose." And he's like, "Oh, sorry about that. Here's some money. Don't sue
It's
me."
2 farthings.
I want to see what it looks like. A nose on a nose. Like, is it still attached to her lips, or like how does it work?
It's on the end of the nose.
So it's just on the tip of her nose as a second nose.
Yeah, I see it just like nose on, like right at the end of her last nose. There's another nose.
So it's like a warp, but it's a nose.
It would look like you just copied and pasted a nose.
Oh, sorry about that. Here's 2 farthings.
Deal with
Like,
it.
she's going to go on botched and get that removed. This is going to cost more than 2 farthings.
They'll be like, "Where have you been for this surgery?" Well, there's this creepy guy in a hut that was giving people money if they slept in the bed with him.
You didn't sleep on the bed with him, did you? No, I made him sleep on the floor. Thank goodness.
St. Joseph didn't need to. He wasn't really bothered, though, was he? Like, about taking the nose back off her, because he was like, "Fuck it, the lizards with the handbags will get her."
With the handbags. Just beating the shit out of her.
No, they've got handbags filled with wasps. We've established it.
Well, maybe they release the wasps and
Yeah,
then
but
just start clobbering.
I think that's what you would do, right? Yeah.
I would.
If the wasps don't get them, then you get them with the swinging.
Well, you want the wasp
handbag.
to be angry, so you've got to sort of,
Right, yeah. No, you're right, yeah, totally. You'd swing them around first to excite the wasps.
Why have people never done that before with wasps in the handbags? Like, it's a self-defense for
Why
women.
indeed?
And that,
What happens when you want to get your lipstick out or your
Well,
wallet?
you'd have a separate bag or a separate compartment. You don't want to be reaching in and getting stung while you get your purse out. I mean, you just zip the wasps.
Just wanted a McDonald's, you know?
You zip the wasps into one half of it, and then you can go in there. Maybe just keep a little bit away in case there's some of the stings.
Like a little zippy pouch.
Yeah.
You can hear them just a little bit whenever you open it. Let me just get my purse. What's that in there? Never you mind. You know.
That's Mummy's secret pouch.
That's Mammy's secret. You don't even tell them what it is. Don't even say it's a wasp pouch. Those words are never uttered.
And if you ask, you'll get wasp nostrils, so stand back.
Yeah. But you forget about it and you'd come home and you just put your bag down and you just hear like you got to let the wasps out. You can't just leave them in there all the time. It's like a prison, you know.
The whole story has ominous undertones. I don't understand what that guy was doing. I just don't. What?
Which guy?
The Saint Joseph.
What was he doing? Just chilling in the woods.
He's got a little house with loads of
Scraping
roots
bark.
and loads of like infinite money that he just gives to little girls. And he has a tailored house that's specifically set up for the same thing to happen.
In the Breal version of this, he was just a straight up pedo that lived in the woods.
He
like,
is a
you know.
pedo. There's no doubt in my
And they
mind.
burnt his cabin down.
He pays them
Yeah.
to forget.
He pays them to forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the double nose some kind of metaphor that we're missing?
Don't be so nosy.
I
Like,
don't know. Of all the
Nosy.
things.
yeah.
Go nosing around.
Yes, exactly. Leave the paedophiles alone if you know what's good for you.
So the moral of the story is, don't be a twat to Saint Joseph or you'll get a second nose.
And do keep wasps in your handbag,
Yeah.
but in a separate pouch. Remember that, kids.
Like the lizards.
And don't forget to change them, because I think after a while you'd have to swap
Yeah,
in fresh ones.
you'd open it up to let out a flurry of violent wasps, and they just kind of fall on the
There'd
floor.
just be dead wasps. Just
Yeah, just you just look really sad. Like,
and you're like, ah, and then it's like, oh.
get away, or
Take
I'll do it. Oh
Just
shit!
a load of dead wasps
And then
just
you get-
scatter onto yourself.
You get raped, you know. So that's even sad. You get raped on a pile of dead wasps, you know. So keep them fresh.
Oh my god.
Keep them fresh. Don't eat too many roots.
Don't eat any roots. If someone offers you roots, they're not able to. What do you call it? They're not capable of the hospitality that you require.
Waspitality.
Hospitality. That's the word of the day. Hospitality. They're not really in a good position to be like entertaining people. Like it's like when you know Mr. Bean, where it's like New Year's Eve, and he's like, I'll get the fucking. He has one twiglet, and he's like, I'll cut some. But he literally does get some bark off the tree, actually, doesn't he? He gets some. Like,
Yes.
But this guy
Yeah,
didn't
for
even have the
twiglets.
And he's like, he's not even disguising it. Like Mr. Bean.
Scrape them roots in. Get them
Mr.
scraped.
Bean at least disguises. He's like, I'll dip them in Marmite and like I'll
Marmite.
pretend. But this guy's just like, here's the roots. They're roots. Like,
Get
and
them scraped.
And not only that, I didn't even scrape them. You scraped them. You know. You want
What
some
do they
roots?
mean by roots?
I
Like-
don't want roots, and I have to scrape them.
Like root vegetables?
No. I assume it's like licorice root.
No, I imagine it like a ginger or something. It's like
Licorice
something.
root's pretty tasty, but I wouldn't offer it
In a
as like.
soup with pancakes.
Yeah, well, they have loads of flavour, don't they? So if you boiled them, you would get a nice
things
broth
are
out of
better
them.
now, though.
Pancakes and soup is not a good meal. That's what I learned. That's the moral of the story. Really. Don't.
Not got any toast.
Got some wasps.
Oh, you and your wasps. You could mash them up. A wasp mash.
It's wasp marmite, so
I
waspmite.
suppose it's recycling them. Like, once they're done stinging people out your bag, get them off the floor, scrape them up, scrape the bark, scrape up the wasps,
Scrape the roots.
scrape the roots, scrape the bark, scrape the wasps. You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just a story about terrible catering, you know.
And paedophiles.
Yeah, pedos have the worst catering.
Yeah.
What happened to the first two daughters?
They skip merrily into the sunset with their pedo cash, right?
The pedo bucket.
Did they just leave? Like they did? Like they must have gone back to the house to tell the
Yeah,
mother.
they clearly went home and went, look at this shit.
So this mother still has two daughters with loads of money.
But it's all right because she got stung
So
by lizards and snakes.
Was it lizards? I thought it was wasps.
No, it was lizards
Wait,
and
where's
snakes.
the wasps come from? Is that just imagination?
I heard wasps.
I heard the wasps
yeah,
stung her in the
No,
feet for raising
It
a
was
bad daughter.
definitely lizards.
It was. I heard lizards. Did I not hear lizards?
Yeah, it says, on the way, however, so many lizards and snakes broke loose on both of them that they did not know how to
Yeah.
save themselves. At least they stung the wicked child to death and they stung the mother in the foot because she had not brought her up better.
Wasps sting. Lizards don't sting. They bite.
Exactly. Lizards don't sting.
Unless they've got wasps.
The thing.
Oh, they've got wasps in tiny bags.
Yeah, which is what I'm pretty sure happened. They just omitted that detail because the story was getting on a bit, wasn't it?
Fucking hell. I noticed it's right at the back of the book. Like, they were really wearing...
It's a top shelf one. What are you talking about?
Alright. I think they were really searching for something there. Like,
They saved the best to last. That was the
I
Grimm's
manually
motto.
found this one. I was like, all right.
read the whole book cover to cover.
Yeah, what did draw you to this
I just
story?
like the.
What was
it
it
was
about
the-
this story?
It was the
that
two
you liked?
noses at first, and I just love how abruptly it ended
Yeah.
with these sassy fucking lizards. Like, raise your kid better.
Yeah.
Have
More
a
people should
wasp
do
in a
that.
handbag.
Well, yeah, right. The lizards weren't even like related
No.
in any way to
They're
Saint
just
Joseph.
like milling around minding their own business, and then
They stole the
Right.
show, though.
over the glass
Right.
sass. Look at
They
this
did.
little brat.
They
She's
did.
getting it.
And a mile get it and all
Yeah.
for raising it.
Reel to the Breal. It's time for the Reel to the Breal, in which we remember something that happened in our lives and try to turn it into a story that sounds vaguely like a grim story. Okay, so this is called The Curse of Hilda, and it's a story about Hilda.
And she got some sort of curse.
That's right, David.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I did worry that maybe the title spoiled the story, but all the other titles were much more spoilerific.
Oh,
so.
right, yeah.
Hilda dropped to her knees in the middle of the forest clearing and thrust her right arm deep into the dark, watery hole. She fished around from side to side, hoping to feel the familiar touch of fur on her fingertips. But it was hopeless. Reach down into that wet brown hole. Do it quick and save your mole. The longer you take, the more will die. You should think twice before you steal my pie.
Andy, this might be too fucking grim, like.
Is this a
Getting a bit scared.
sexual story?
Oh, the sexual stuff's just to throw you off the scent. It's working. As it sang, the vicious brown toad kicked its legs high into the air. One by one, the villagers, whom the toad had manacled, dropped down dead. This was a very naughty toad, and it had the power to stop the hearts of each of the captive villagers with its magic webbed feet. Oh, and that's magic spelled with a K in case you were wondering, so you know I'm not fucking around. For about half an hour, Hilda struggled like this. her arm flailing in the hole as she grew more and more exhausted, while all around her, the villagers pleaded with her to make it stop. Eventually, when Hilda was the only remaining villager left, the repugnant little toad laughed before hopping up to perch itself on the pile of dead villagers. "Now, behold your arm," said the very bad toad. Hilda, almost paralyzed with fright, slowly retracted her arm from the sodden hole. First came the elbow, then the forearm, then the wrist, then the knuckles of her hand, then the fingers, then the fingernails, finally the fingertips. It was only then that Hilda saw her true punishment. "Oh, how you were such a foolish mare, to stick an unprotected arm in there. Now forever you'll carry the curse that will make your life very slightly worse." "Oh no," Hilda said. "I have a hairier arm now." "That's right," said the grubby toad. "You have a hairier arm now. What do you think about that?" "You have cursed me." "Yes," said the toad. And with that, satisfied with his part in this tale, he hopped down from the pile of dead villagers and set off into another story. Something about 2 chickens and a squirrel who eventually eat each other for some reason. Hilda was bereft. There she lay in her own spew. Did I mention she had been sick? Surrounded by the bodies of her friends and family. Could this day get any worse, she said, as she wiped the dribbles of spit from her chin with the bristles on her now more absorbent arm. At that moment, a passing carriage driven by a potato and a fox slowed down to take a good look. Hilda saw them squint and raise their noses in disgust in her direction. There could now be no doubt. This was definitely the worst thing to happen to Hilda for stealing a toad's pie.
I just think it's a bit rude of the potato that, I mean, you're a fucking potato. Who are you to judge one of my fucking hairy arms? At least I have arms.
I like that sentence. I just think it's a bit rude of that potato. like that sentence on its own.
A bit rude, isn't it?
I just think, that potato, it's a bit rude.
But it should learn some fucking manners, or it's going to have, lizards and snakes after it.
Mm-hmm. True that.
It needs a good wasp bagging. Sure. Can we think of a better verb for that?
Wasp bagging? No, I quite.
Wasp bagging.
Wagging.
Wagging, yeah.
Wagging.
Or basping.
Perfect.
Baspin's better. Need a good baspin, yeah. Gasping for a baspin, huh?
Hilda picked herself up and trudged down the road as fast as she could, her arm now hidden in her shawl. Luckily, it didn't take long for Hilda to find a new shack in a new village. There was an opening a few miles down the road after a family had been tricked into stitching themselves into a kite by a slice of bread. Hilda quickly settled into her new home, and before long she was sitting down to trim short the hairs on her right arm to match those on her left. However, when she had finished cutting, the hairs on her right arm sprung back to their longer length with a sickening burp. Hilda cursed at her curse. "You cunt of a curse!" she said. When finally, Hilda had composed herself, she next resolved to grow out the hairs on her left arm to match the ones on her right. But in the end, she just didn't have the genes for it, no matter how much yeast paste she rubbed on each night. And so, though the years passed, Hilda never forgot her old friend the mole, nor did she stop being self-conscious about her mismatched arms, even though you really had to look at them to notice. Because of this, Hilda rarely left her shack, and when she did, she made sure she always wore long-sleeved cloth sacks. That was until one hot summer day when she heard the ringing bell of the Cream Man. That's about to get good now, everybody. The sound of the bell snapped Hilda out of her afternoon weeping. Finding herself so frazzled by the heat, she rushed out of her shack to cool herself with the room-temperature cream, forgetting to roll down the long cloth of her sleeves. It was buy one get one free Wednesdays at Edmund's Travelling Creamery. She had arrived just before a large queue formed. "Would you like a bratwurst in it, love?" asked Edmund, his face like an old penis.
It's a bit forward.
"No thanks." "No thanks, just pour some rabbit's blood on, tar," Hilda said before she felt something grasp onto her right arm. She froze, suddenly realizing her bare arm was on show, and for a moment, in her mind's eye, she could feel the potato and the fox looking at her anew. Oh no, she thought, they've finally noticed. Tears filled the corners of her eyes as she took a deep breath and looked down, expecting to see the steely hand of the village sheriff ready to lead her to jail. But what Hilda saw was not the sheriff's hand. Instead, it was the pudgy paw of a young mole. Hilda's heart swelled. Had her friend come back to her? Was this just a nightmare after all? "Grandpa?" asked the mole, looking up at her, his tiny eyes squinting behind thick glasses. "Oh no, young mole, I'm not your grandpa," said Hilda, hiding her disappointment that this was not her old friend returned, but a different short-sighted wretch. I'm afraid that my slightly hairier right arm has tricked you into thinking I am your grandpa," Hilda said, bracing herself for the ridicule from the crowd. The mole blushed. Realizing its mistake, it ran back to the correct arm of its grandpa. That's right, thought Hilda, run from the monster. She held her head in shame and awaited her judgment. At that moment, a passing carriage, driven by a potato and a fox, slowed down to take a good look. Not again, thought Hilda. This time, however, they paid no notice to her. Instead, they stared at the young mole. In fact, everyone around the travelling creamery had a right big laugh at the foolish and half-blind young mole who had grabbed a stranger's arm by mistake. So much so that it became too much for the young mole, and he ran all the way home. This, of course, made them all laugh more. What a total fuckwit he was, they all thought. Hilda was elated. For the first time in years, her right arm was free and easy in the breeze, and she realised that no one at all cared a fig. The end.
Let me just get this straight. You're the mole.
I think he's Hilda. Have you got a slightly hairy right arm?
I do, but that's unrelated to this story.
Right.
Short-sighted rich.
Yeah, I'm the short-sighted wretch, definitely. I thought that was pretty obvious. That's kind of why I started laughing by the end of it. I thought, yeah, they know that I've just ran home all the way.
After thinking that some poor woman was your granddad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is at an ice cream van, right? I
Yes.
nailed it.
The real, yeah, exactly. I mean, a creamery, a travelling creamery. How absurd. I know the truth. It was an ice cream van, and my grandpa took me out to get an ice cream.
And you thought that a sweet old lady...
That was a young lady, actually. I'd let go of my granddad's hand, and obviously I went to get my ice cream, I think, and then grabbed the first hairy arm that was at sort of my eye level, and it happened to be a lady's arm.
There was a lot
She
of
was clearly cursed.
That was
there was a lot of
that
shit
was, that was made up.
to justify the mistake that you'd made. Like there was a curse. It was all because she put her arm in some fucking. What was it? What was that all about at the beginning?
I thought that was in keeping with the spirit of a grim story, right? There's all of this shit at the beginning that doesn't really matter. Well, then you get to the end, and then something bad happens, and then everyone's dead, right? I mean, there was a mole that had been thrown in the hole, and she was trying to rescue it before all the villagers were
And
killed.
so why was she punished?
Because she tried to steal a pie from the toad.
She tried to steal a pie from the toad. And then the toad killed all the villagers. And the mole was in some sort of hole. And in trying to save the mole, she was then cursed with the hairy arm.
Yes.
Right. I just needed a recap there, like
Yeah.
a series recap.
Yeah.
There's a lot to take in.
What I got from that is that potatoes are fucking nebby bastards, aren't
You
they?
need better manners.
Yeah, just mind your own fucking business. Just drive on.
Potatoes,
Potato.
lizards,
Can you sting a potato with a wasp? Can they penetrate the potato?
David, let's not go into penetrating potatoes.
Yes.
Where's Jen today, anyway?
Jen's had to go to the hospital. She's been stung by a lot of wasps. Some mad woman had them in a handbag
Oh, come
on the
on.
bus.
Grim to the brim to the brim. I like that. Grim to the brim.
catch us next week, and don't forget to smash that like button. Hit subscribe.
Subscribe.
Tschüss.